I helped my brother leave his bride at the altar because of the shocking truth she was hiding. Hey, Reddit. Long-time lurker here, finally working up the nerve to share a story that's been haunting me for weeks. I'm not sure if I'm looking for judgment, advice, or just a place to scream into the void, but this situation has been weighing on me, and I need to get it out. Strap in, because this one's a roller coaster. Let me start by saying that my family isn't just dysfunctional, it's a masterclass in toxic relationships. Growing up, my brother Liam and I didn't have the kind of mother who packed lunches or helped with homework. Instead, she thrived on chaos. Everything had to revolve around her, and if it didn't, she made sure to create a spectacle until it did. Manipulation was her weapon of choice, and she wielded it expertly. By the time Liam and I were teenagers, we were experts at navigating her mood swings, but the cost of survival was heavy. Eventually, we both realized the only way to protect ourselves was to distance ourselves from her entirely. It wasn't an easy decision, but it was necessary. Liam and I cut contact with her after an incident that nearly tore our family apart, something I won't get into here, but trust me, it was bad enough to seal the deal. From that moment on, we made a pact, we'd always look out for each other, and we wouldn't let her back into our lives. That's why, when Liam met Emily, I was so happy for him. She seemed like the breath of fresh air he desperately needed. Emily was warm, kind, and grounded in a way that balanced Liam's more cautious, reserved personality. She came from a loving family, the kind where people actually enjoy Thanksgiving dinners together. Liam was smitten, and honestly, so was I. Emily felt like the missing piece to his puzzle, and I was thrilled when they announced their engagement. From the start, Liam and I agreed on one thing: our mother would have no place at the wedding. Liam was adamant about this boundary, and Emily seemed to understand. She had listened to his stories, nodded in sympathy, and reassured him that she supported his decision. For the first time, it felt like Liam was truly building a future free from the shadow of our mother's toxicity. Or so I thought. In the weeks leading up to the wedding, I started noticing little red flags, but I brushed them off at the time. Emily began making comments about the importance of family and how weddings were a chance for people to come together and heal old wounds. Liam confided in me that he was worried she didn't fully grasp the depth of our mother's manipulations, but he waved it off as pre-wedding jitters. I wanted to believe that Emily had his best interests at heart, so I didn't push the issue. The morning of the wedding was picture perfect. The venue was stunning, set against a backdrop of rolling hills and blooming flowers. Guests were buzzing with excitement, and everything seemed to be falling into place. I arrived early to help with last-minute preparations and to be there for Liam, who was a bundle of nerves but trying to hold it together. As the guests began to trickle in, I was walking toward the main entrance when I froze. There, mingling effortlessly with the crowd, was a face I never expected to see: our mother. She was dressed as if she were the star of the event, her posture exuding confidence and her smile radiating false charm. She moved through the guests like she belonged there, exchanging pleasantries and soaking up the attention. Panic gripped me. Liam and I had made it clear, absolutely clear, that she was not to be invited. My first thought was that she had crashed the wedding, but then I noticed something that made my stomach drop. Emily, standing near the entrance, smiled warmly at her as they exchanged a quick hug. That was when everything clicked. Emily had invited her. It was like a puzzle falling into place, and the picture it revealed made my heart sink. All the vague comments about family, all the moments of hesitation when Liam expressed his concerns, it had all been leading to this. Emily hadn't just ignored Liam's boundary, she had deliberately undermined it. My mind raced as I tried to figure out what to do. Liam was somewhere inside, completely unaware that the woman who had caused him so much pain was mingling with the guests at his wedding. I knew I had to tell him before the ceremony started, but a part of me hesitated. This was his wedding day. Was I about to destroy everything? I found Liam in a small room near the back of the venue, pacing nervously. His tie was slightly askew, and he looked like he hadn't slept in days. When I told him what I had seen, his face went pale. He sat down heavily in one of the chairs, his hands trembling as he processed what I had just said. It wasn't just shock, it was heartbreak. Liam had trusted Emily to support him, to respect his boundaries, and to protect him from the one person who had caused him the most harm. Her betrayal cut deeper than words could express. What happened next will stay with me forever. Liam stood up, his expression hardening as he made a decision that would change everything. When Liam stood up, something shifted in the air. The heartbreak I'd seen on his face moments earlier had been replaced by resolve, a quiet determination that left no room for doubt. This wasn't just a wedding anymore, it was a line in the sand, a defining moment in his life. He didn't say anything, but the way he moved was enough. I followed him as he strode toward the hallway leading to the venue's main entrance, his posture stiff and his fists clenched at his sides. I wasn't sure what he was planning, but I knew one thing for certain, he wasn't going to let this betrayal slide. As we approached the crowd, I could see the guests still mingling, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing beneath the surface. Our mother was there, laughing with an older couple near the refreshment table, her charm on full display. Emily stood a short distance away, chatting with someone who appeared to be a family member. She looked radiant in her wedding dress, the picture of a perfect bride, but the sight of her made my stomach churn. Liam stopped abruptly, taking it all in. His eyes scanned the scene, lingering on our mother for a moment, before shifting to Emily. I could see the conflict etched on his face, the internal battle between his love for her and the undeniable reality of her betrayal. And then he turned to me, his expression a mix of pain and resolve. Without a word, he motioned for me to follow him away from the crowd. We ended up back in the small room where he'd been pacing earlier, the door clicking shut behind us. He took a deep breath, running his hands through his hair as if trying to steady himself. Finally, he spoke. His voice was calm but firm, each word deliberate. He couldn't go through with it. Not like this. Liam told me he felt like the foundation of their relationship had been shattered. Trust, he said, was the most important thing between two people, and Emily had not only broken his trust but had sided with the one person he had worked so hard to escape. He couldn't marry someone who thought it was acceptable to undermine his boundaries, no matter how much he loved her. I listened, my heart breaking for him, but I knew he was right. This wasn't just about the wedding, it was about the kind of life he wanted to build, one free from the toxicity that had defined so much of our childhood. He deserved a partner who would stand by him, not one who would drag him back into the very pain he was trying to leave behind. But ending things wouldn't be easy. This wasn't a quiet breakup over coffee. This was a wedding, with hundreds of guests waiting in the next room, all expecting to see Liam walk down the aisle. The thought of the chaos that would follow his decision was almost enough to make him hesitate, but he knew he couldn't go through with the ceremony just to save face. We spent the next few minutes strategizing, trying to figure out the best way to handle the situation. Liam wanted to be honest with Emily, to confront her directly and explain why he couldn't marry her. But he also knew that doing so in front of the guests would create a spectacle, one that would forever be etched in the memories of everyone involved. In the end, Liam decided to speak to Emily privately before making any announcements. It was the only way to maintain some semblance of dignity in an otherwise messy situation. As Liam walked out of the room, heading toward the bridal suite where Emily was getting ready, I felt a pang of anxiety. This was the moment everything would unravel, and there was no turning back. I waited outside the room, pacing nervously as the minutes ticked by. The murmur of voices on the other side of the door was muffled but intense. I couldn't make out the words, but the tone was unmistakable. It was a conversation that would change both of their lives. When Liam finally emerged, his face was pale but composed. He didn't say much, just that Emily had tried to defend her decision, claiming she thought she was doing what was best for him. But her excuses only solidified his resolve. Liam walked away from the conversation knowing he had made the right choice. The next part was the hardest. Liam had to inform the guests that the wedding was off. He refused to let our mother or Emily take control of the narrative, knowing they might twist the situation to paint him as the villain. With his voice steady and his shoulders squared, Liam addressed the crowd. He told them the wedding was cancelled, thanked everyone for coming, and asked for their understanding. He didn't go into details, but the weight of his words was enough to convey the gravity of the situation. Our mother, true to form, tried to interject, but Liam shut her down with a look so cold it could have frozen water. For the first time in my life, I saw her falter, her confidence cracking under the intensity of his gaze. She didn't say another word. As the guests began to disperse, a mixture of confusion and whispered speculation filling the air, Liam and I slipped away. We left the venue together, stepping into the cool afternoon air as if emerging from a war zone. But as we walked toward the parking lot, something caught my eye, a figure standing near the edge of the property, watching us intently. It was Emily. She wasn't crying or shouting. She was just standing there, her expression unreadable, her wedding dress billowing slightly in the breeze. And then I saw it. The way her gaze shifted past us, toward the parking lot where our mother was climbing into her car. Emily's expression softened, and for the briefest moment, it was almost as if she was relieved. Something about that moment didn't sit right with me. The image of Emily standing there, her wedding dress stark against the backdrop of the fading day, stayed with me. She wasn't devastated, angry, or even shocked. She seemed resigned. And the way her eyes softened when she looked at our mother? That didn't feel like someone who had just lost the man she planned to spend her life with. It felt like someone who had just closed a chapter she was never fully committed to. As Liam and I drove away from the venue in silence, my mind churned with questions I couldn't shake. Why had Emily gone to such lengths to invite our mother? Why had she jeopardized her relationship with Liam for someone she barely knew? And why did she seem so calm when it all fell apart? The next day, Liam and I sat down to piece everything together. He was drained, physically and emotionally, but there was a quiet determination about him. He wanted answers, and so did I. We decided to start with the obvious, Emily's decision to invite our mother. Liam combed through their recent text messages and emails, looking for clues. At first, it seemed like there wasn't much to find, just the usual wedding planning chatter. But then, buried in a thread of seemingly innocuous messages, we found something that made our blood run cold. It was an email from Emily to our mother, sent weeks before the wedding. The subject line read, "Liam doesn't have to know." The message was short but damning. Emily had reached out to our mother, apologizing for how unfairly Liam had treated her and inviting her to the wedding as a surprise. She wrote about how she believed in healing wounds and restoring family bonds, but the tone of the email wasn't as altruistic as she likely intended. It felt condescending, almost like Emily was playing the role of a savior trying to fix something she didn't fully understand. Liam was livid. It wasn't just the betrayal, it was the arrogance. Emily had decided that she knew better than him, that his boundaries were less important than her vision of a perfect family reunion. And she had done all of this behind his back, knowing full well how deeply it would hurt him. But the email wasn't the only thing we found. As we dug deeper, more unsettling details came to light. There were additional emails between Emily and our mother, some of them casual and friendly, others bordering on manipulative. Our mother had clearly been feeding Emily a version of events that painted herself as the victim, how she just wanted to see her son happy, how she never meant to hurt anyone. And Emily, for reasons we couldn't yet understand, had bought into it completely. The pieces of the puzzle were falling into place, but one question still loomed: why? Why would Emily align herself with someone she knew had caused Liam so much pain? Why would she jeopardize her future for a woman she barely knew? Liam decided to confront Emily directly. He wasn't looking for reconciliation, he was done with her. But he needed to understand her motives, to hear her side of the story before he could truly move on. I offered to go with him, but he insisted on doing it alone. When Liam returned that evening, his face was pale, his jaw tight. He didn't say much at first, just sat down heavily on the couch and stared at the floor. Finally, he looked up and told me what Emily had said. She admitted everything. She confessed to inviting our mother, to lying to Liam about it, and to convincing herself that it was for the best. But there was more, something darker, something that made my skin crawl. Emily revealed that our mother had been reaching out to her long before the wedding planning began. It started small, with innocent messages on social media. Our mother had painted a picture of herself as a misunderstood, loving parent who had been unfairly cut out of her children's lives. She had played on Emily's empathy, framing Liam and me as bitter and unforgiving. Over time, their conversations grew more frequent, more personal. Our mother began to plant seeds of doubt in Emily's mind, suggesting that Liam's distance wasn't just about her, it was about his inability to let go of the past. Emily, who had always prided herself on being a peacemaker, fell for it. She saw herself as the bridge between Liam and his estranged family, the person who could mend the rift and bring everyone back together. She genuinely believed she was doing the right thing, even as she lied and manipulated to make it happen. But there was another layer to Emily's actions, one that left Liam reeling. She admitted that part of her decision wasn't just about healing wounds. It was about control. Emily had always wanted to be the person who fixed everything, who made things right. By inviting our mother, she wasn't just trying to repair a family, she was trying to prove something to herself, to Liam, and to everyone else. She wanted to be the savior in a story that wasn't hers to rewrite. Liam didn't say much after that. He didn't need to. The weight of Emily's betrayal and our mother's manipulations was enough to crush any lingering hope he might have had for their relationship. As I sat with Liam that night, watching him process the magnitude of what had happened, I realized something chilling. This wasn't just a wedding that had gone wrong. It was a battle between past and future, between the toxic grip of our childhood and the promise of a better life. And for a brief moment, our mother had almost won. In the days that followed Liam's conversation with Emily, things took an unexpected turn. The wedding may have been called off, but the fallout was far from over. Emily had packed her things and moved out of their shared apartment, leaving only a brief note apologizing for her actions. She claimed she never meant to hurt him, but the damage was done. Liam was trying to pick up the pieces of his life, but something still didn't sit right. Emily's confession had answered some questions, but it had also raised new ones, questions that were far more unsettling. Why had our mother reached out to Emily in the first place? And why had Emily been so willing to jeopardize everything for a woman she barely knew? As Liam and I talked it over, we couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to the story, something neither Emily nor our mother had fully revealed. Then, the package arrived. It was a plain manila envelope, left on Liam's doorstep, without a return address. Inside was a stack of papers and a single photograph. The photo stopped us cold. It was of our mother, sitting at a cafe table across from a man we didn't recognize. They were deep in conversation, their expressions serious. But it wasn't the image itself that unnerved us, it was the date stamped on the corner. It had been taken 6 months earlier, long before Emily and Liam's wedding planning had even begun. The papers were worse. They were copies of emails and text messages, all between our mother and Emily. The messages painted a disturbing picture. Our mother hadn't just reached out to Emily as a concerned parent looking to reconcile, she had orchestrated the entire thing. She had carefully manipulated Emily, feeding her stories designed to make her question Liam's judgment and positioning herself as the victim of his unreasonable estrangement. But the most damning revelation came in a single email near the bottom of the stack. It was from Emily to our mother, dated shortly after the engagement announcement. In it, Emily mentioned something about a promise she had made to our mother, a promise to do what was necessary to bring the family together. The language was vague, but the implications were clear. Emily's actions hadn't been spontaneous or misguided. They had been calculated, part of a plan she and our mother had concocted together. Liam was furious, but more than that, he was hurt. The person he had trusted most had conspired with the person he trusted least, and for what? Some twisted idea of family unity? As we pored over the documents, Liam's anger turned to determination. He wasn't going to let our mother get away with this. The next step was obvious, we had to confront her. We drove to her house the next morning, the envelope of evidence sitting between us like a ticking time bomb. Neither of us spoke much on the way there. The tension was palpable, a mixture of anger, dread, and a lingering hope that maybe, just maybe, there was some explanation we hadn't considered. Our mother answered the door with her usual air of feigned surprise, acting as if she hadn't expected to see us. She invited us in, but Liam declined, opting to confront her on the porch instead. He handed her the envelope, his expression cold and unyielding. As she flipped through the contents, her face remained unreadable. When she reached the photograph, however, something shifted. A flicker of recognition crossed her features, followed by a flash of annoyance. She quickly masked it with a dismissive laugh, but it was too late. We had seen it. She didn't deny anything. Instead, she launched into a carefully rehearsed defense, claiming that she had only been trying to help Liam and Emily build a stronger relationship. She framed her actions as selfless, a desperate attempt to mend a broken family. But the more she talked, the more her true motives became clear. This wasn't about Liam or Emily, it was about control. Our mother had always thrived on chaos, and this was no different. By inserting herself into the wedding planning, she had found a way to reassert her influence over Liam's life. She had used Emily as a pawn, exploiting her naivety and her desire to fix things, all to satisfy her own need for relevance. Liam didn't let her finish. For the first time in his life, he stood up to her without hesitation, without fear. He told her exactly how her actions had affected him, how her manipulation had nearly destroyed everything he had worked for. He told her that he was done with her lies, her schemes, and her toxic presence. Her response was chilling. Instead of apologizing or showing any sign of remorse, she smirked. She actually smirked. Then, in a tone dripping with condescension, she said something I'll never forget, "You'll come crawling back. They always do." Liam walked away without another word, leaving her standing on the porch, clutching the envelope. I followed him, my heart pounding as I processed what had just happened. On the drive home, Liam was quiet. He had finally confronted the person who had caused him so much pain, but the victory felt hollow. Our mother wasn't going to change. She never would. But Liam wasn't doing this for her. He was doing it for himself, for his own peace of mind, for the life he wanted to build without her interference. Later that night, we received a text from an unknown number. It was a single sentence, "You're making a mistake." It was unsigned, but we didn't need a name to know who had sent it. The text, "You're making a mistake," lingered on Liam's phone screen like a bad omen. It wasn't just a message, it was a statement of defiance, a refusal to let go. It was clear who had sent it, even though it was unsigned. Our mother's presence was like smoke. Just when we thought we had cleared the air, she found another way to seep in. But something was different now. The message didn't hit with the same force it might have weeks earlier. It no longer carried the weight of fear or uncertainty. Instead, it solidified something that had been building inside both of us. This was the end. Not the beginning of another battle, not a continuation of the same endless cycle. It was the end. Liam didn't respond to the text. He didn't acknowledge it, didn't dwell on it, didn't even flinch. He simply put his phone down, looked at me, and said, "I'm done." And I believed him. But while Liam seemed ready to move forward, I couldn't shake the lingering questions. Our mother's manipulation of Emily had been deeply calculated, almost predatory. She had sought out someone who would fall for her charm, who would see her as a victim and work to fix the broken family she claimed to want back. But why now? Why after all these years? And why risk so much for a plan that was bound to fall apart? The answer came sooner than I expected. About 2 weeks after Liam's final conversation with Emily, a letter arrived at my apartment. It was from our mother, handwritten on expensive stationery, the kind she always reserved for moments when she wanted to appear sincere. The sight of her handwriting sent a shiver down my spine, but curiosity got the better of me. I opened it, half expecting another guilt-laden diatribe about how we had wronged her. But this letter was different. It wasn't angry or accusatory. It was measured, almost clinical. In it, our mother outlined her version of events, how she had connected with Emily, what they had discussed, and why she believed her actions were justified. She claimed she had only wanted to save Liam from himself, to stop him from making a mistake by shutting her out. At first, it seemed like the same manipulative nonsense she had always spouted, dressed up in flowery language to mask her true intentions. But as I read further, something stood out. She mentioned a difficult financial situation she had been facing over the past year, one that had forced her to take drastic measures. It was a throwaway line, buried in a paragraph about her struggles, but it caught my attention. Our mother had always been financially secure. She had inherited money from her parents, owned her house outright, and had never worked a day in her life. The idea that she was suddenly in financial trouble didn't make sense. Unless the pieces began to fall into place. Her sudden reappearance in our lives. The relentless effort to embed herself in Liam's wedding. The need to control the narrative. It wasn't just about power or attention, it was about survival. I shared the letter with Liam, and together, we started digging. What we found was both shocking and unsurprising. Our mother's finances had been crumbling for months. She had made a series of bad investments, the kind fueled by greed and overconfidence, and had lost almost everything. The house was in foreclosure, her savings were gone, and she was desperate. Her plan to manipulate Emily wasn't just about reconnecting with her children, it was a calculated attempt to secure a foothold in Liam's life, to position herself as an indispensable part of his future. She had hoped that by worming her way back into his good graces through Emily, she could eventually rely on him for financial support. Liam was furious. This wasn't just a betrayal, it was exploitation. Our mother had seen him not as her son, but as a resource, a solution to her self-inflicted problems. Her actions weren't born of love or regret, they were born of desperation and greed. Liam decided to confront her one last time. This time, it wasn't about closure or understanding, it was about making it clear that she was no longer welcome in his life. We drove to her house together, the tension between us thick but focused. When she opened the door, her expression was a mixture of surprise and smug satisfaction, as if she had been expecting us to come crawling back. But Liam didn't let her get a word in. He laid everything out, the emails, the manipulation, the financial desperation she had tried to hide. He told her he knew exactly what she had been trying to do, and that it was over. No more second chances, no more opportunities to worm her way back in. Our mother didn't try to deny it. Instead, she leaned into her old tactics, playing the victim, claiming she had been forced into her actions by circumstances beyond her control. But her words rang hollow, and for the first time, they didn't affect us. When Liam walked away from her that day, I could see the weight lifting off his shoulders. He wasn't just leaving her behind, he was leaving behind years of guilt, fear, and manipulation. In the weeks that followed, we took steps to ensure our mother could no longer interfere in our lives. We blocked her numbers, changed our contact information, and made sure she had no way to reach us. It wasn't just about cutting her off, it was about protecting the lives we were building without her. Liam began to thrive in ways I hadn't seen before. He threw himself into his work, reconnected with friends, and even started therapy to process everything he had been through. He wasn't just surviving anymore, he was living. As for me, I felt an overwhelming sense of relief. For the first time, our mother's shadow wasn't looming over us, dictating our every move. We were free. But the final piece of closure came in the form of a call from Emily, months after the wedding that wasn't. She apologized, truly and deeply, for everything she had done. She admitted that she had been naive, that she had let herself be manipulated by someone she didn't fully understand. It wasn't forgiveness she was looking for, just a chance to take accountability. Liam listened but didn't offer much in return. He was polite but distant, and when the call ended, he simply said, "That chapter is closed." And it was. Because sometimes, breaking the cycle isn't about winning or losing, it's about walking away. And once you do, you realize that freedom isn't just the absence of control, it's the power to write your own story.